So, welcome back to the Marshall Report here at Long Beach Comic Con. Right now we have another great veteran of the comics industry, Marv Wolfman.
Hi there.
Oh man, it is great to chat with you as someone who grew up with Teen Titans and so many other things you've worked on over the years. It is an honor to chat with you here today.
Thank you.
Well, you're doing great things in the video game world these days. This is like your real like outlet these days, it seems like.
Well, the video game world is brand new, and we have a chance to do some really interesting storytelling that has never been seen before, because video games, unlike comics or movies or animation or novels, is not a linear media.
Right.
So you have to rethink everything, and what that means is, as a writer, you can't go by what is rote. You can't go by what you know. You have to struggle, you have to push, you have to try things. And when you do that, your writing gets better because you're working to the top of your capacity, not to the mid-ground.
Well, Epic Mickey 2 is the big one that's on everybody's minds right now, and everyone's asking about. What can you tell us about what we're going to see in the sequel? For fans of Epic Mickey, the first one along, I mean, you're doing some huge things. You got Oswald coming in for this one.
Well, Oswald was in the first Epic Mickey, but what's a couple of huge things in this one. One, the first Epic Mickey, nobody spoke. It was all in text. This one, every character speaks, and of course they speak with their Disney voices, the voices they've always had. So Mickey's going to sound like Mickey, Donald, all those characters are going to sound like them. What was really fun for me was nobody had ever written dialogue to be spoken for Oswald before. And he was a silent cartoon, silent animation character. So I got to write the very first spoken lines for Oswald. The other thing that's really great about this, and I did not write this, but the game actually has a slew of songs, very Disney-esque, very funny, very Ashman and Menken type songs that are hysterical. And they're all sung by the Mad Doctor, who has the weirdest voice you could ever imagine. So I sat in on one of the voice recordings and just couldn't believe how incredible it was.
Now, as a writer, you mentioned that writing for video games really does sort of strengthen you as a writer because you have to create so many different narratives going on.
Well, it doesn't restrict you. It actually makes you work.
Strengthen you,
strengthen you.
Yeah. And so with the video game here, what did you learn from writing some of these other characters? Because these are characters I'm sure you've been familiar with for ages and ages, like the rest of us.
Well, I have one step up on that, because I was the founding editor of Disney Adventures magazine. I did it for 4.5 years.
That's true.
I wrote Mickey Mouse.
So this was old hat to you to actually connect with these characters.
I got the job partially because I wrote video games, and mainly because I wrote video games but also wrote Mickey. And the people in charge of Junction Point, Warren Spector and his people, really liked my Mickey Mouse comics. So they knew I could write the character because I had done it and proved it over a number of years, and they knew I wrote video games. So it was a perfect mesh between the two of them. Yeah,
well, what can people expect that was new in Epic Mickey 2? We know about Oswald, we know that there's going to be the dialogue, but plot-wise, where do things pick up?
It picks up after the end of Epic Mickey 1. However, there is a recap there that's done through the Sorcerer from the Sorcerer's Apprentice. So if you didn't play the game before, you can pick up everything you need to know. Also, unlike the first game, which was on the Wii console only, this one's on all the consoles. So it's on the PS3, it's on the Xbox 360, and the Wii. It's on everything that you could possibly find. So that opens it up for a whole new batch of people. We have, as I say, Oswald, but what's interesting about Oswald this time is in the first game, he sort of appeared and disappeared. He not only is with Mickey and helping Mickey all the time, but if you have a second player, that person can take over Oswald and actually control him like you control Mickey. So you now have a co-op game where two players can work together. One is Mickey, one is Oswald. So that's really different. In terms of story, the basic concept is there's an earthquake that has gone through Wasteland. And Mickey and Oswald and company realize it's a lot more than just an earthquake. Now it's a matter of what is it, what's causing the damage, and how do you stop it?
We've seen a lot of crossover between comics and video games lately, both kind of going both ways. I'm curious what's your take on why this is happening so much between those two mediums especially?
Well, I think video games tends to do the type of material that is easily translatable into comics. So, for instance, I wrote the God of War comic because I love God of War. There's the Uncharted, there's a whole bunch of other comics based on video games. On the other hand, there's been a number of comic books that have been adapted into video games. Both tell stories, both are illustrated in one fashion or another, and both are very dynamic. There's major differences between the two because in comics, the writer and the artist control everything. We control the pacing, we control every experience that you're going to get. In video games, the player does. So that's a great way of exploring brand new things with each one of those characters.
Well, one of the final things I wanted to ask you about was a project I'm very curious about. I think it may be stalled right now, but this Judas Contract animated movie, will we ever see that? Because this is something I really want to see from you. I really want to see that.
I think Warner's, I would too, because I co-wrote the first draft.
Yeah.
I think Warner's, for the most part, is currently interested mostly with the classic DC characters, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Those are the ones that most people know outside of comics. The problem with Titans, and certainly it's not a creative one or a sales thing in comics, it was the #1 selling comic for over a decade that I was on the book.
Successful.
But it's not in the numbers that you need to sell a video game. So perhaps when the new Titans show comes out next year, or if some of the Titans characters get really popular, Deathstroke is going to be on Arrow
right?
next week. Perhaps that will make those characters more popular and bring them up to the level where you could sell that to people who had never seen a comic book in the world. Right now you can't do that, and I understand that these things are very, very expensive. Millions of dollars are put into it, and you don't want to waste it on something that only a small percentage of people will know about.
Well, excellent. Well, Marv, I can't thank you enough for joining me here on the show to chat about Epic Mickey 2 and Judas Contract and all of these things here. It is an honor.
Thank you.
I thank everyone for tuning in once again to the Marshall Report here at Long Beach Comic Con. Marv, thank you so much.
My pleasure.